Her name in this story is Grandmother Lang, and I want to be upfront with you before we start. She's a composite, a representative figure drawn from the documented patterns of real centenarians in one county in southern China. But the detail I'm about to give you is not invented. It's the actual daily pattern researchers have recorded over and over in this region. Every morning, before the sun is fully up, she boils one pot. Black soybeans and brown rice together in the same pot her mother used, and her mother's mother before that. She has never taken a supplement. She has never counted a single gram of protein. She still walks the terraced path to her vegetable patch most mornings, not because a doctor told her to, but because that is simply what the morning is for. No one in her household calls any of this a health practice. It is just what breakfast is. Here is the number that should stop you. The county she lives in, Bama Yao, in the karst hill country of Guangxi province, has roughly 43 centenarians per 100,000 people. The United Nations defines a recognized longevity zone as a region with 7.5 centenarians per 100,000. Bama isn't just above that line. It's nearly 6 times above it. And this isn't a wealthy region with access to advanced medicine or longevity clinics. It's one of the more remote, historically poorer counties in China. No specialized intervention drove this number. Something sitting on the dinner table every single day for decades did the work instead. Before I get into the layers, I want to be honest about something most videos skip. Genetics matters here. Researchers studying Bama found that about half of its centenarians have a documented family history of longevity, meaning their parents or siblings also lived exceptionally long. That's real, and I won't pretend otherwise. But genetics alone has never explained a 6 times multiplier like this. Families with longevity genes exist everywhere without producing results like Bama's. Something on the plate is doing measurable work, layered on top of whatever genetic advantage some of these families carry. That's what the research has been trying to isolate, and that's what we're going to look at now. Layer 1 is the foundation, and it starts with what's missing from the traditional Bama diet as much as what's present in it. Researchers who studied the eating pattern in this region, going back to fieldwork conducted through the Institute of Geriatrics at Beijing Hospital in the 1990s, described it the same way across decades of observation: low in calories, low in fat, low in animal protein, low in salt, low in sugar, high in fiber, high in vitamin E. That is the clinical summary of what people in this region have eaten for generations, meal after meal, without ever once calling it a protocol. The staple vegetables are almost defiantly simple: cabbage, green beans, bamboo shoots when they're in season, wild greens gathered from the hillside, bitter and fibrous, the same general category of plant that shows up wherever researchers study long-lived populations around the world. And the grain underneath it all isn't polished white rice. It's brown rice, sometimes black rice, the kind where the bran layer hasn't been stripped away. Here's why that distinction matters at the cellular level. In 2022, researchers published a metabolomics study comparing 30 healthy centenarians from the Bama region against 31 elderly people aged 60 to 70 from that same region. They analyzed urine metabolites and, critically, the short-chain fatty acids present in fecal samples, measuring directly what the gut bacteria of these two groups were actually producing. What they found was a measurable difference in how the centenarians metabolized phospholipids, amino acids, and fermentation byproducts, differences that tracked closely with dietary patterns. Short-chain fatty acids are what gut bacteria produce when they ferment fiber, the kind of fiber found in whole grains and vegetables, not the kind found in refined white rice. These fatty acids fuel the cells lining your colon, help maintain that lining's structural integrity, and are associated with a less chronically inflamed gut environment over time. This isn't borrowed from a textbook. It's the documented biochemical signature researchers measured in the centenarians themselves. Layer 1 in practice is this: Whole grain, specifically brown or black rice instead of white, paired with a generous serving of vegetables at the first meal of the day. That's the entire foundation. Nothing exotic. That's the floor everything else gets built on. Your action today, the next time you'd reach for white rice, reach for brown or black instead, and put a full cup of any green vegetable on the plate with it. Not a garnish, a real serving. Now layer 2, because this is where most people get the picture wrong. This is the amplifier, and it centers on soy. Soy has a contradictory reputation in the West. Half the conversation is fear, usually rooted in old animal studies using doses and forms no human actually eats. The other half is hype, usually selling you an isolated soy protein powder stripped of everything that made the original food work. Neither version matches what the long-term human data actually shows. The Shanghai Women's Health Study followed 73,223 women over a mean follow-up period of 7.4 years, tracking soy food intake using a detailed food frequency questionnaire covering tofu, soy milk, fresh soybeans, and other soy products. Women in the highest quintile of adult soy intake had a relative risk of premenopausal breast cancer of roughly 0.41 to 0.44 compared to women in the lowest quintile. A statistically significant association, p-value under 0.001. The women eating the most soy had around half the risk of the women eating the least. This didn't sit in isolation. The Shanghai Breast Cancer Survival Study found that higher soy isoflavone intake after diagnosis, at or above 56 milligrams a day versus under 31 milligrams a day, was associated with a sharply reduced risk of osteoporotic fracture in premenopausal survivors. And when researchers pooled data across both American and Chinese cohorts, they found soy isoflavone intake at or above 10 milligrams a day associated with reduced cancer recurrence and reduced overall mortality in breast cancer survivors. These are observational associations, not guarantees for any individual, and the researchers themselves describe them that way. But the direction of the evidence, consistent across multiple independent cohorts studied by different teams, points the same way. Here's the mechanism. Soy contains isoflavones, plant compounds that act as phytoestrogens. They bind weakly to estrogen receptors, and that weak modulating binding behaves very differently from the way synthetic combined hormone therapy behaves. The isoflavones aren't flooding the body with hormonal activity. They're a gentle regulator, and they arrive bundled with fiber, minerals, and other plant compounds, the same whole food matrix effect documented elsewhere, where nutrients isolated into a pill behave differently from the way they behave inside the food itself. This is what Grandmother Lang is doing every morning without knowing any of these numbers. The Bama diet does not run on soy protein isolate. It runs on tofu, soy milk, soybean porridge eaten as the first food of the day, whole, not isolated, daily, not occasional. Your action for layer 2. Today, replace one meal's processed meat with a serving of whole or fermented soy, tofu in a stir-fry, soy milk at breakfast, edamame as a snack. The specific form matters far less than the consistency. Layer 3 is the one most coverage leaves out because it is not a nutrient you can put a number on, it's structure. Field researchers documenting Bama's centenarians noted what exists alongside the diet. Many of these individuals continued physical labor well into their 90s, walking, farming, tending gardens, not as a scheduled exercise routine, but as the unremarkable texture of daily life. They lived in multi-generational households. Researchers described a notably calm relationship with aging itself. I'm not going to give you a specific stress hormone statistic here because I want to stay precise about what's been measured versus what's been qualitatively observed. What I can tell you is that the pattern researchers kept documenting, daily low-intensity movement, consistent social structure, and a diet that never meaningfully deviated from the same basic foods across decades is the same shape of pattern that appears again and again in longevity research conducted in entirely different parts of the world. The mechanism tying it together isn't exotic, it's consistency. A diet eaten occasionally doesn't produce a measurable shift in gut metabolism or hormonal signaling. A diet eaten every day for 50 years does, and the metabolomic data from Bama is essentially a snapshot of exactly that accumulated effect, captured in the body chemistry of people who never once thought of what they were doing as an intervention. Here is where the three layers converge, and this moment is worth sitting with. The 2022 metabolomic study measured something biochemical, real quantifiable differences in fatty acid and phospholipid metabolism inside living Bama centenarians. The Shanghai cohort studies measured something epidemiological, SOY intake tracked against breast cancer outcomes in tens of thousands of women over years, and the Beijing hospital field researchers measured something behavioral, the actual daily eating pattern of the centenarian population documented directly. 3 different research approaches, 3 different teams, 3 different kinds of data, all pointing back to the same 2 ingredients in Grandmother Lang's pot: whole grain and fiber on one side, whole and fermented soy on the other, eaten daily without exception for decades. The bean and the grain aren't 2 separate strategies, they are one daily pattern, repeated until the body itself begins to reflect it. Here is the one thing to do today. Cook 1 pot tonight. 1 pot. Brown or black rice with a handful of soybeans or a block of tofu stirred through it. That's the actual base meal researchers documented in Bama. 1 pot tonight. If you want the full 90-day structured version of this pattern with shopping lists and meal templates built for a normal Western grocery store, the Old World Table Guide is there for you through the link in the description. Subscribe to Asian Wisdom for more deep dives into the documented eating patterns behind the world's longest-lived populations, sourced from published research, not supplement marketing. And tell me in the comments, between whole grain and whole soy, which one is already in your kitchen right now? 1 word is enough. I read every single one.